Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to another video. And in this one, I want to actually talk about what I do as a senior QA analyst who works in the games industry, who works from home, and if I enjoy it still or not. So let's get into it. Now, QA does a lot of different things. I've worked as a QA tester, a QA specialist, QA analyst, senior QA analyst, QA engineer, senior QA engineer, lead QA engineer, studio test lead, senior studio test lead. So I work in a lot of different QA and test roles, but this is actually the first time I've been in a senior role on a contract. And if you saw my last video, I give the pros and cons about working in the games industry as a contracted worker. So be sure to check out that video. In fact, I'll leave it pinned up there so you can check it out when you're ready. But let's talk about all the different things that I do in QA in the games industry. So the first thing I do is I go to daily meetings with my team, with our outsourced team. We have internal QA team, we have outsourced QA team, a few meetings throughout the week with the entire studio to give updates, ask questions about upcoming milestones and things like that, and see where the progress is for a lot of the new features and functionality that are going to be implemented into our game. Alongside that is trying to figure out what can we test, how can we test those things, writing up test plans, documentation, making sure that the engineering, design, and other documentation is actually fleshed out and understandable enough for us to write test cases, ask other questions, and validate the features and functionality that are being implemented in upcoming milestones. So outside of just test cases and asking questions and documentation, all that stuff, we do go in and test stuff in builds. So we have different branches for different builds, different milestones. We also review pull requests, depending on what it is. We'll check it out in Unity editor. So we'll pull down branches through GitHub and we'll test that stuff in Unity editor and verify that nothing is going wrong in this single branch before it's merged into development or the next release branch. So it's interesting because I haven't reviewed pull requests in a long time and I like it. I like when we're given more things to kind of interact with and do outside of just regular testing, because going into different branches and making sure things are okay before they get merged and doesn't break the whole game is actually super critical to the overall quality of a game, a service, a product, whatever it is. This level of hands-on in terms of, validation on the QA side is exciting to me. I like doing that. I don't like just running through test cases and validating tickets, which we'll get to the ticket stuff in a second, but the pull request is great because initially when I started on this contract at the studio, I was not doing that. I was not being added to the pull request, which was not surprising because I was new to the project and, I guess other teams didn't realize that we had another QA person internally. So that all changed within a couple of months and I got access to the repo and everything. And I was able to start looking at PRs and actually going through things and asking questions and pushing back on things that either through errors or had some crazy exception, and made sure that the quality of the branch was good before it was merged in. So that's something I really like is verifying the PRs, because it shouldn't just be on the engineers to do that. It should be on design, QA, and everyone else who is able to review these things. Now, let's talk about the tickets. So I'm used to validating stories, tasks, bugs, all of those things. And I've used a variety of different programs over the years, mainly Jira for going through stories, tasks, subtasks, and bug tickets. But, switching over to something like Linear, which is less feature packed, it doesn't have the same level of, integration or dashboard support. It is challenging, to say the least. I wish we were using Jira, but it is what it is. You use a different tool, you get used to it. It's just more experience down the line, in my opinion. So, going through the different tickets in Linear and making sure that all the fields are filled out, because one of the biggest things I can't understand and just don't like in general is when someone creates a ticket, adds a title, and that's it. There's no description, there's no fixed version, there's no subtask or tasks, there's no linked dependencies, and there's no information on how it's supposed to be validated by QA when it's moved to QA ready. So one thing in terms of tickets that I've really pushed back on at every company I've worked for is making sure that the tickets are updated, they have all the relevant information we need, they're attached to the correct project, milestone, fixed version, dependencies, and they get moved over when they're actually ready to be tested and not just sitting in this in progress status for weeks. So the ticket system that we use, like I said, is linear. I wish it was Jira, but that's unfortunately not the case. When I started looking at the tickets, I started really asking questions about process and things like that and making sure that things were updated. So now we're at a point where we're getting more information. It's still not enough, but it's way better than what it was when I first started. Keep in mind though, this is not every team or every department that does this. There is one team in particular that is very detailed in their tickets, like extremely detailed, and in their documentation. They're incredible. Thank you. But some teams are still doing this, and it's unfortunate because it hurts the overall quality of, I think, the studio when it comes to having, but some teams are still doing this, and it hurts the overall quality and process of the studio when you have tickets with no descriptions or information. Then other teams have to push back and those tickets have to be sent back, which causes even more process change and delays in terms of validation, handoff to other teams, etc. So yeah, fill out your tickets. It's important for not just QA, but like everyone who's looking at these things. There are so many stakeholders involved with different features, different milestones, whatever it may be. And QA is not the only one looking at these things. So it's important that all this stuff is detailed, clear to understand, and everyone's aware of any risk, dependencies, or additional work that's required for this to get through the finish line. Now, another part of my job specifically right now is I took on specific features and specific tasks. So I'll talk about the task first, actually. One thing that I used to do at my previous job was give status updates for all the QA stuff that was in the pipeline or almost complete, whatever it is. I gave statuses for everything that was being worked on or about to start on the live ops side for QA. Now, at this studio, what I'm doing is I'm giving updates for everything in the next upcoming milestones that's currently in test, things that are going to be coming to QA soon, and tasking for the external team to work on during their shift, because they are on the other side of the world and they work completely different time zones. So by the time I'm going to sleep, they're starting their shift. So it's important for us to be able to effectively communicate the work that needs to be done, hand it off, and make sure that the other team understands what's going on in the development process. And they can ask any questions they may need to when we sync up the next morning, or just in Slack or the related tickets or whatever it is. But having proper handoff is important, and being able to do that in a single daily Slack update is incredibly effective, because you're not only giving updates to all of the stakeholders and just every department in general, but you're giving tasking out to the external team, and you're giving some insight into what you're working on internally and what the external team is going to be working on during their shift. So everyone has full visibility into what's happening on the QA side every day. But yeah, I think that's mostly it. Like I said, it's a lot of testing on devices in the actual builds. It's a lot of validation of pull requests. It's a lot of validation of bugs, making sure that regressions are resolved, going through feature tickets, making sure all the tickets are updated and have everything that QA needs to validate them. Same with documentation, making sure we write out test cases and create test plans for every feature or major piece of functionality in each milestone. And, you know, getting clarity in different meetings that we have with, you know, internal QA team, external QA team, other departments, and just making sure that everyone's on the same page about what's coming down the pipeline if there's something that needs to be pushed out to the next milestone, if we have bandwidth to cover unexpected things, and just making sure that we're on the same page, honestly, because working in games is hard. I've worked in very small studios, very large studios, some of the biggest companies in the world, and it's not always easy. Doesn't matter if you have all of the resources or, you know, a very lean team. All of these things can be issues at one point or another. So be sure to keep that in mind. And if you have any questions about anything else QA related or game related in terms of the games industry, then feel free to leave a comment below. But yeah, I will say though, like, I've been working in QA for 14 years now. I love it. It's very stressful at times, but I'm glad I went on this journey and did something that wasn't just working security, because I worked security for 7.5 years before this. So yeah, I would say to anyone who's thinking about jumping from like one job to another, do your research. If QA is something you're interested in, then feel free to reach out. But yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see each other next time.